There we go. Cool. Hello. T-shirt weather. Look at this. Sun's out, guns out. Sky's out, thighs out. It's here, folks. It's hot. Turned the air conditioning on just a minute ago. All right, let's get down to business in that movie. This week. So, since Alex and I talked about the old survey thing last week, we didn't talk about the principles, but made a change last week. So, I don't know if you remember, I mentioned this, a bunch of weeks ago. I'm trying to do something different. So, we've got 15 principles, and last week we restarted back to the top. The last cycle, right? The last 15 weeks that we went through them, I tried to also take them through our little transformation plan, right? So, which is a ripoff of my mom told me where this came from one time because I said this and didn't know where it came from, and she told me, and now I still forgot. But this whole 4-quadrant system of going from a state of unconscious incompetence to a state of conscious incompetence to conscious competence to unconscious competence, right? This progression, right? We've talked about this a lot. So the first stage, right? Essentially what we're doing there is we are taking a proper assessment. Right? We're saying, okay, where are we actually at? Let's bring some awareness so we can, not necessarily gain any skill or anything, but simply go from clueless to, okay, I know what's going on here, right? So that's really how I approached my daily questions for the last 15 weeks. Let's just assess. Let's say, hey, where are we at, right? What's our starting point? Now, made a shift, and I'm trying to ask questions that, they're either getting straight to some teaching points, or I'm asking questions that in and of themselves, they have some presuppositions of things that are true, right? In order to answer them, it presupposes something that I want to be teaching, right? So, kind of skipped the last week, the overarching, to obtain health of the body, what it needs, stay away from what it doesn't. So we're going to skip right on. Actually, let me skim these real quick. Yeah, I'm going to skip. We're going to skip over those. We missed it. Sorry. Next time, you got like a year and a half before I'm going to ask those again. All right. So, principle of the week. The human body needs to eat real food most of the time in order to survive and thrive. So, my first two questions this week and my last two questions are kind of grouped together, right? So the first two questions I asked were, hey, do you look when you're eating a food that so a single ingredient food, right? You grab an apple. There's technically no other ingredients in there. We could get really down into the weeds and talk about, okay, there's different things being sprayed on these things, but at a real high level, okay, it's single ingredient food. Ground beef, single ingredient food, celery, right? Those things don't have ingredient lists, right? And we one of the things we teach is that, okay, while we want to be getting the majority of our foods, from those types of things, just because something is processed somewhat or packaged at all is not an immediate red flag, okay? It can be, but it's not an immediate thing. It simply means we need to ask more questions, right? So when you're eating those foods, first question is, hey, do you look for seed oils, vegetable and seed oils, when you're eating anything that comes in a package that has an ingredient list? Right? That would be, hey, teaching somebody how to read an ingredient list. That's going to be the first thing, okay? The first thing that I'm saying, get used to looking for this, right? And if you did that alone, right? If you just started looking for vegetable and seed oils and you stopped consuming anything that contained those, you're going to see a massive improvement in your health. I would say this is on the same level as, and actually, I'm so far removed from this reality that I don't even think about it. But I would say if you're drinking soda, right? If you're just guzzling down high fructose corn syrup, this is like on par with that. You stop doing that, right? You're going to see just massive improvements in your health. Okay. Then the second one is, hey, do you look for added sweeteners when you're eating packaged foods, right? That's probably like the second one that's like, hey, like look for the oils. If those check out, then see what's going on here, right? And this is also maybe after the general rule of, hey, if this ingredient list is a mile long, it's probably not even worth sifting through, right? It's probably not even worth trying to pronounce this stuff, because the likelihood of you, and actually here's something I have found that I've looked at something, maybe it is one of these things that has a mile long ingredient list, and generally there can be stuff like that the first handful of ingredients on there are fine things. But then because it's so big, sometimes I have found myself just straight up missing things, right? Because there's so much to read there that it's like, and it's fine print and all this that you straight up miss it, right? And so yeah, there's probably a length where it's like, hey, that's already like, that's a red flag, right? Not that there's anything wrong with quantity of ingredients, but again, this is a generality. And generalities are helpful. In general, that's likely going to be a terrible choice. So, but yeah, one of the second things that it's like, okay, if the seed oils, the vegetable oils check out, if there's not any of those, the next thing I'm going to be trying to find out is, okay, what is this thing being sweetened with, right? And lots of different ways that this can go wrong. Some of them being artificial sweeteners, things we don't want to be putting in our bodies, and then some in the form of things that are actually, highly refined sugars, right? So we already mentioned it, the high fructose corn syrup, right? That's one of the worst forms of carbohydrate that you could put in your body. But here's the nuance here is also like, sugar is not the enemy, right? Sugar itself is not something that's like, hey, don't touch this with the 10-foot pole. So I gave this example. When I smoke meat, which I do a lot of, certain cuts of meat, like I'm putting some sugar on the outside of that meat, right? And yeah, I use like organic, and oftentimes I'll use like a coconut sugar, but like it's still sugar, right? And it's the same carbohydrate profile, probably, I think, as your refined white sugar, whatever. But I'm not afraid of that just because it's giving my meat a little bit of sweetness. You think about, okay, if I've got a 15-pound brisket and I take the bag and I kind of liberally sprinkle it all over the thing and rub it in, like, think about the quantity of that you're actually getting in the amount that's going to end up on your plate, right? It's not high at all, right? So the same is true of some of these other foods. I can't give you a perfect example off the top of my head, but it's like, just because it might be using an organic cane sugar, I would say there's certainly going to be circumstances where, like, the total volume of that is not really adding up all that much. Maybe it's one of a couple sweeteners they're using in something. I can think of, drinks where they'll use a little bit of sugar, they'll use a little bit of stevia, for example, or some monk fruit, right? Some of these other natural, 0-calorie sweeteners, but just for a proprietary taste or whatever, they'll use a little bit of sugar, and it's like the total quantity that's in the beverage. It's still like, it's nothing crazy, right? So it's not going to be something that I'm going to say, hey, avoid this at all costs, right? Within the right context, it's like that could be a completely fine thing to consume, right? But yeah, this is definitely a place where we can get into a lot of trouble with some of the other, crappy artificial sweeteners. Then, yesterday and today, okay, these are two good questions here. So, question yesterday is, hey, are you cooking the majority of your meals, right? And we really think that is a good aim for most people, right? If you are taking ingredients and constructing meals, the likelihood that we're going to eliminate so many of these massive issues, like it's pretty high, right? If you have figured out, okay, I'm not going to cook with any crappy vegetable and seed oils anymore, and then you take raw ingredients and you put them together to create something, like, dude, even at lower qualities, even if we don't know how to construct a meal the best way, we have just automatically gotten rid of so many issues, right? So yeah, we really think you should be cooking a lot of your meals, because it's so much easier to make those good, clean, healthy meals, and it's so much harder to get that amount of quality and fend off all these nasty things that are filling our food system if you are primarily eating out and relying on restaurants to feed you. Yep, it's real hard, real hard. Okay, then today's question. This is nice and cryptic, just the way I like it. The question is, hey, are you taking dominion over the 3 tiers of preparedness? In quotes, okay? This is a term that I affectionately coined here. 3 tiers of preparedness. So here's the idea. Plan A, right? Tier 1. Yesterday's question, are you cooking most of your meals, right? That's going to require fresh ingredients in your fridge, on your countertop, right? Is your fridge full of meat that you're going to cook? Is it full of produce? Do you have potatoes and bananas and other stuff sitting out on your counter, right? Is your house full of these things? Okay, because I would say that's our first line of defense, right? That's our aim. We're trying to cook most of our meals out of these fresh ingredients, right? Then, hey, tier 2, right? When we have to shift to plan B, right? Oh, shoot. We're going to make it to the store yesterday and we didn't get there. And so now it's 5 o'clock and we don't have a plan for dinner, okay? Tier 2, right? This plan B, I say, hey, what is in your freezer and in your pantry, okay? What has some of that you don't need to think about buying every week, right? Because it can sit, in the freezer or in the pantry for a longer amount of time. But it's there for moments like this, right? When you can, if your original plan failed, hey, maybe you tried a new recipe and you freaking lit it on fire, right? And now it's burnt and now you got to figure something else out, right? What kind of plan Bs do you have? So for example, we always have these, molded, I don't know if mold is the right word, these hamburger patties, right? These frozen hamburger patties, big stack of them. We've always got these things in our freezer because it and I would say we do buy these all the time because we use them all the time. But I know that we're always going to have, a sleeve or two of those in the freezer because it's so easy. Just real quick, I can grab those, throw them in a pan, right? If it's just me, or, I can light the grill up and throw those on the grill, and 20 minutes later, we're good to go. That's one thing that, hey, always have it at the ready. Because it is quick, and we can do that on short notice, and hey, not skip a beat, right? Thinking about, so for me, I have a highly restricted diet, if you didn't already know that, right? But one of the other things that I always keep around is frozen berries, right? I don't have to worry about things being fresh and not going bad in the fridge or whatever. We always have frozen berries, right? Other side of that, things we keep like in our pantry. Stuff that we've always got in there. So a handful of different like canned things. So we'll keep, maybe some, organic beans, green beans, black beans. We always keep rice in there. We usually have we buy like a lot of like brown rice pasta. Single ingredient brown rice formed into pasta or whatever. And that's stuff that you can real quick, like I would say under 20 minutes, we can cook one of those things up, boil some water, throw those noodles in or whatever it is. And hey, we can construct a quick meal out of that. Tier 2, plan B, freezer pantry, right? Then, hey, the house is empty, right? We went on vacation, we got home early, and it's dinner time, and we don't have a plan, right? There is no food in the house. Great. That's fine. Where can you go and not have to simply surrender to, going to McDonald's or getting Pizza Hut or whatever, right? What restaurants can you go to where that you don't have to sacrifice that? Again, you don't have to skip a beat. This could be, multiple layers of this. I would say, hey, know some kind of quicker, faster service places where you can get something really good. Know like the best restaurants in town where you can go get a great meal. But then also another way that I use this is knowing, hey, like thinking just like utility. Right. So one of the things that I'll run into is my plan A is, hey, at dinner time, we cook a bunch of food and we have extras, and I essentially just like throw that in a container, and that's my, first meal the next day. And for whatever reason, maybe we did something else for dinner, we didn't cook, or there wasn't enough leftovers, whatever. It's like, there's times where I get in a situation where I don't have something like that. I leave the house in the morning and I don't have a meal packed, right? I don't necessarily have time to go back home and cook something. So strictly like utility here, I'm not looking to, share a meal with the family or whatever, but I know, hey, Fresh Thyme is right over here. And I know the handful of things where I can run in there, and for $10 or less, I can throw together a meal, right? I can get a certain amount of protein. Heck, I can just even grab a piece of fruit, and like we're good to go, right? So there you have it, right? That's kind of how deeply we need to think about how we prepare ourselves, how we have a good game plan for, hey, how to eat well the majority of the time, right? Say most of the time. It's going to require you to think that many layers deep, right? So it's one thing to be cooking meals well, right? But if you're doing that and still your freezer is just, full of tombstone, right? You got a bunch of frozen pizzas in there, and anytime you fail to have a fresh meal to cook, you resort to pizza rolls or TV dinners or whatever it is, right? Hey, that's not going to go very well for you. Let's upgrade that. if your pantry is always full of freaking Doritos or whatever, right? Microwave popcorn. We can upgrade those things. And then if, hey, any time that it's like, all right, we gotta go out, we gotta buy something. If you're always, getting pizza or always going to, get burger and French fries or chicken nuggets or whatever, right? It's like we have a place in our principles where we're gonna say, hey, enjoy whatever you want on occasion. It's good for you to do that, but if that's the only tool you've got in your tool belt whenever you need to like go out and buy some food, it's like we can do better than that, right? So that is kind of where we're going with that whole idea, right? As far as training, we're continuing to ramp up, preparing for Memorial Day, preparing for Murph. If you're listening to this and you're not a gym member, but you are one of those people who likes to come do Murph with us, at bare minimum, hey, everything is infinitely scalable, even that crazy workout. And if you want to show up that day, we will regress it appropriately. But also, hey, you can prepare yourself, or hey, you can show up here and prepare with us. We had a little bit of that. We are still trucking our way through a little strength cycle here with some squatting and some bench pressing. But then, if you may have noticed, maybe you didn't, I'm starting to shift some things a little bit with the programming, okay, for a couple reasons. So the shift I'm trying to, slowly make is basically to lean even heavier, lean even harder, maybe that's a better term, lean even harder into strength building and muscle building, okay? Not at the cost of any of our conditioning necessarily, not at the cost of getting your heart rate up and making sure that, hey, we are, still working a cardiorespiratory system. But, man, I'm just personally becoming more and more convinced that strength and muscle mass is, in terms of both longevity and performance, man, it's hard to argue that there's anything more important, right? So, one of the things that, even though people like to complain all the time about hard workouts that make you breathe heavy, the ones that are long and blah, 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 there's an element to that it's just fun, right? The working against the clock and going all out and all that stuff, it's enjoyable, right? Whether you like to complain about it or not. But there's ways that we can do that just with a little more thought on my part, we can do those types of workouts and get some benefit with the strength building and muscle building and how we're lifting and all that stuff, right? So I'm continuing to try to get a little more creative. Because it's like you can write a strength program that's super effective and boring as heck, right? And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't stick with it, because it can be monotonous, and that can be effective, right? But I think we can also make something a little more beautiful than that. So, oh man, I think I just marked myself on the neck. Don't scratch yourself with a pen, kids. Don't scratch your neck with a pen. I'll look at that later. So, next couple of weeks, still gonna, just progressively building, some volume with the running and the pull-ups and the push-ups and the air squats. And then, I would say post Murph, that might be when you really can smell some changes that I'm trying to make as far as how we approach our strength work and just how we accumulate work throughout the week overall. Prioritizing strength, prioritizing getting big and strong, right? Because I think it's real good. So I guess, so I mentioned, hey, for longevity's sake, right, when you get older, right, strength and muscle mass is one of those things that it's like this is decreasing, and the bigger hedge that you can build against, being a frail old body, the better. But also from a performance standpoint, I talked to a few people about just the sport and performance aspect of this stuff this week, and it's like, hey, for the most part, it's like this is first a strength sport, right? You got to be strong enough to be able to perform well, and then once you are strong enough, sure, it becomes, hey, who's fittest? It becomes more of an endurance and aerobic sport. But like if you're not strong enough, like there's nothing else that's gonna help you get more handstand push-ups or move a weight faster or whatever. Like you gotta be strong enough, right? So it's real important. All right, I think that's it. Probably forgetting stuff. If you're a dude, you want to join us tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock, get your butt here. We'll talk about being better men, taking care of our bodies. Probably talk about some health stuff. If you got questions, right? That's I told the dudes last week, like, hey, here's kind of what I want to talk about, but also, like, if you've got questions about things, asking questions that pertain specifically to your day-to-day life is like, that's the most valuable thing we can offer, right? I can sit here and talk all day about the principles. I can talk about philosophy of things. I can talk in generalities about what's good and all this stuff. But the things that you're dealing with day in and day out, and being able to kind of give counsel on those specific, hyper-specific levels, and in a way that allows you to actually create change, right, and make improvements. I mean, there's nothing more valuable than that, right? The nothing more valuable than the education that actually translates into action, right? It translates into change in your life. So these Saturday morning things, yeah, that's one of the great ways for at least dudes. I don't know many women who really want to get up at 5 o'clock on a Saturday anyway. Yeah, for the dudes to come in and sink your teeth in to all this stuff. So cool. See you tomorrow or today or whenever.